You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hey everybody, Gail Kraft here with the Empowering Process podcast, and I have with me a friend, Travis Crutcher. You're going to love the discussion he and I are going to have. Let me tell you a little bit about Travis. By the way, Travis, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's going to be great. So Travis is a retired infantry senior non-commissioned officer and a ranger. He served in multiple senior leadership positions, both statewide as well as deployed. During his time in service, Travis cultivated his unique style and helped junior leaders develop into the next generation of dynamic leaders. And believe me, he has a unique style. Since retiring from the United States Army, Travis has continued his work in helping companies, leaders, and individuals unlock their full potential. He does this by sharing 15 years of leadership experience, candid real-world stories, and applicable interpersonal skills. By teaching Travis's methodologies, leaders are able to get clarity, increase influence, and make lasting sustainable impact. So yes, increase influence and clarity. Crazy, right, Travis?
It's fun. It's crazy.
Clarity. I mean,
who needs it? It's overrated.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just get there. I will tell you a quick story, and then I want to start hearing from you. I've been, in corporate America. I was in corporate America for quite a while, and in very high influential roles. And I would always say, what's it look like when we're done?
Right.
Why are we doing? What's the purpose? Does it fit in with our vision? And when I switched to being a consultant, I would foolishly ask the same question. Right? And the response was, I hired you to do the job, but I don't know why I'm doing it.
Right.
So I can't make choices when I have to.
Why is a tricky question for people, isn't it?
They're so afraid of it because they're not clear.
And what's crazy is you and I both know, especially the nature of our work now, like you start with that end state and work your way backwards.
Always.
It's so much easier.
Oh my
God.
God.
Much easier to get to the end state.
Right.
If you can figure out that end state why. But the other thing, we could go deep in the weeds on that, but I don't want your 2-month why. I want your 10-year why.
Yes. However, and then we'll get to why we're here. Who knows how this is going to go? Travis, we'll just talk. Right?
We can make it up. It's fine.
Yeah, we can make it up. So, so I had a client when I first started out. So a lot of these experiences, thank you. When I first started out, I had some really tough situations. And, I said, in 5 years, where do you see yourself? And he couldn't dream.
Right.
He couldn't get there. And and I've had many clients who have been like that. They don't know how to dream because as children, they didn't dream.
Right.
For him, he didn't have to. He was going to go into his father's business. He was from Ireland. Oops, he married a girl in America. Guess what? He's not going into dad's business. So he didn't know how to dream. So we had to work on that kind of stuff first.
Yeah. Yep. It's tough.
Yeah. And then, I had another who was sickly as a child, still dealt with sick issues. And all he dreamt about was not hurting tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When you get stuck in those boxes, it's very difficult to think outside of them, especially when it pertains to something for yourself,
Yeah. So, so yes, we got there. It's like, well, what about 5 days from now?
Right.
What about 2 weeks from now?
Right.
What about a month from now? Oh, that hurts. Okay, let's go 4 weeks. Isn't that a month?
Semantics are important.
Yeah, it's perspective. So Travis, we want to get back to your unique style. You've been dealing with leaders for a while now, and a lot of what you bring to the table are the experiences that you learned both as a military man and in combat. And so let's talk about some of those stories and how those translate into real world, corporate, or even entrepreneurial decision making.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it all started when, like, we'll do a whole whole Genesis story, right? But the
Yeah.
reality is, like, I was kind of painfully shy till about third grade, and then kind of, then I kind of quit caring a little bit. But I'll never forget, and I think you and I talked about this story briefly. When I first enlisted in the Army, we get to Fort Benning, Georgia, or as it's known better as like the home for wayward boys, right? We get there, and there's 240 of us in the company, but 60 in my platoon. And I'll never forget the first day there, my drill sergeant, Robert Union Shank, opens the door of his office, says, "Clean the barracks," and slams the door. We have no idea what we're doing. Never met each other. I don't know anyone's names. He just tells 60 complete strangers to fix a problem. And to this day, I will never be able to pinpoint the why that I decided to open my mouth. But everyone's just standing there. I think it was fear. Fear propelled me to go forward because everyone's standing there. And I realized, like, if someone doesn't do something soon, we're all screwed.
Right.
And so what fell out of my mouth was a workable plan. And 59 other humans decided that would work, and they started doing it. And that was really the genesis moment for like my entire leadership career. It's so funny that it's such a small moment in time, but really, like, in that moment, I was like, okay, I can do this if I just open my mouth a little bit. And I think a lot of times in leadership, there's someone over there with a better way, but they're afraid to open their mouth, whether it's because of judgment or because they think they're going to look stupid, that they're all going to laugh at you, right? From Carrie, like, but we have that like in us. And I think that's one of the hardest hurdles for people in leadership to overcome, is to just open your mouth, let the words fall out.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with judgment. I spend a lot of time, I have training courses and spend a lot of time on judgment with my clients. And I used to say to not let judgment affect you and to stop judging,
Right.
until I realized that is humanly impossible.
Sure.
Because our job is to make choices. And in order to make choices, you're judging.
We have to judge things, yes.
Right? I like this, I don't like that. Whoops, there's a judgment, right? So
I think a lot of times what folks have a tendency to do, though, is, everyone's got their little hangups, their little personal picadillos, and the things that they're insecure about, even though on the surface they may seem like they're wildly confident about everything. And what humans do, at least what I've seen, especially in the leadership world, is that you will project your insecurities and make it, you think that's what that person thinks of you. And so everyone you meet, you're like, no, they think my haircut's stupid. They think this tie looks dumb, like whatever it is. And so you lack the confidence to open your mouth because you're projecting your own insecurities onto other human beings. And that's just, it's like when you look in the mirror, if you can objectively go, okay, no one else sees the imperfections that I see. You probably look great, but you're insecure about it all day because you've got one hair that won't lay down right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it affects your ability to make informed decisions.
Right.
It affects your ability to stay in a leadership role, right? And it affects the team that is dependent on you to defend them, to stand up for them, to give them guidance. Right? If you're not confident in who you are, right, the shit will hit the fan.
1,000%.
1,000%.
And it really depends. Like, there's nuance to all that kind of stuff. It depends on how long you've worked with the team too, like how truly transparent you can be with how screwed up the situation is. But I can't tell you how many times, like, I'd get a mission brief and I go brief my guys, and it's like, in the back of my head, it's like, this is not good. This is a really bad situation. But I have to brief it like, it's going to be awesome, guys. We're going to kill it. We're going to do so good. And all the guys are not going to shoot at us, and we're not going to get blown up at all.
There would be no guns.
And, after 2 or 3 months in Baghdad, they're like, okay, whatever. Like, they know better. But you have to own the space you're in, even if you're not. I hate the term fake it till you make it. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about being disingenuous. We're talking about, like, you have to Jim Jones yourself. You've got to drink your own Kool-Aid first before anyone's going to line up behind you to drink it.
I love that. Yes. Actually, the coach that both of us met each other on, he and I had a conversation not too long ago. And one of the things that he said to me, he said, you're one of the few coaches who actually practices what she preaches. Right. How can I coach someone and you practice what you preach? How can you possibly tell someone this is going to be awesome if you haven't done it yourself.
If you can't apply it yourself, 100%.
Right. Or say, this is going to suck, but it's going to be great at the end. I'll go with
Yes.
you. I'm there with you.
But so many people fail to do that. I think a lot of times, particularly again, back to the leadership perspective, just in those moments where it's going to be a dicey situation, it's going to suck. And you may not be confident in the situation, but if you've led appropriately up to that point, if you followed like coach, train, mentor, make sure you've empowered your subordinates to know their job inside and out and your job as well, then you can have confidence in your preparedness. So you don't have to care about the situation. You're ready for whatever it is.
Right. So in business, that preparedness, one of the things that I talk about, because I have a project management background along with my leadership, is risk management.
Right.
What's the worst thing that could happen?
Oh my goodness.
Now, what are the odds that it's going to happen? Okay, let's not waste our time on that. But what potentially might happen? So what's your contingency plan? And what happens is, out of the 500 things that you come up with, 2 may actually happen.
Right.
But when the shit hits the fan that you didn't think of, you have trained yourself to plan and respond.
Are you suggesting you be proactive rather than reactive?
Oh my gosh, yes, I think I
How
am.
dare you? How dare you? But it's so true. And I think, to your point, like the more contingency planning obviously was a huge part of my life before now, but it's like when you set yourself some parameters for, like you said, the worst case scenario,
right?
And you realize, okay, that, like you said, it's very slim that's going to happen. I mean, is there a possibility that our vehicle is going to get hit and all of us die? Yeah, but it's slim given statistics. One of us will be all right, whatever.
Right.
And so then if you deal with that first, and then you go the other direction to like, oh, crazy wazoo, best case scenario. Oh, we roll into downtown Baghdad and they have a party for us. Probably not going to happen either.
Right.
So now you can stop that catastrophizing that stops forward action, and you can narrow your focus onto actionable things.
Right. And that is so, so important. And again, when I was in business, I was able to work on risks because I was in a leadership role. But as a consultant, I would come up with, okay, so what are the issues? What is the potential of failure? Where are the breaking points? Where are the weakness? Where's the resource constraints? Okay, this will go fine. Hell no, it's not going to go fine.
Right.
Right. And I'm going to make a list of things I know will go wrong.
Sure.
And
then it really boils down to, like, once you start going through that list of potential pitfalls, a lot of times you're going to find something systematically broken.
Yes.
You start looking at hard data and realize, okay, well, this is broken every time. Why?
Right.
And so often it's just a slight deviation left and everything's back on track and we're fine.
Right. And it doesn't take, it takes being honest, and it takes balls. It takes balls.
For sure.
The last corporate job I had, and this is why I was out of corporate, one of the things I did was a lessons learned. I had one of the worst projects that company ever saw.
Right.
And I ran into every pitfall, weakness that company had along the way, including, never mind, doesn't matter. And when I presented first to leadership, my SWOT, right? And here are the issues, and here's what we can do about them.
Right.
I was told, you cannot present this. We cannot talk about this. We cannot verbalize these problems. And I'm like, they're systematic and there are solutions.
Right.
I'm not pointing fingers at you're a bad department or you're a bad manager. I'm saying we are systemically broken, but we can fix it.
But I think so many people, you and we're in a good space where we can look at, failure as a growth opportunity.
Yes.
And so many people look at failure as like the end. It's,
right.
Oh, I'm in trouble because I failed.
Right.
I think it's because of how we grew up with the big red F on your paper. Like, you got to hide that from your parents or you're going to catch a beating kind of thing. But that's just, that's not reality. And the truth of it is, if you're leading appropriately and you're leading with transparency, like you welcome that criticism. You welcome an opportunity to improve your team.
Right.
It's that ego that gets in the way of taking that criticism and running with it and improving stuff.
Right. And it causes distrust. It causes, learning how to do things behind closed doors. It really is just horrific. I did a major project one time. This is when I was in a leadership role. And it was all systems came down, everything, it was brutal. And, distance. We were not like in the same room. And so I'm working with IT and there's a failure point. I want a risk management plan for that. There's a failure point. I want a risk management plan for that. Right. And they gave me such flack. But the weekend that we took this place down, 2 of them hit. And I had the customer in the room with me, and I would just send a text, pull out the plan, bam, fixed. Pull out the plan, bam, fixed. That customer, when we were done, said, Gail, I didn't think you were able to pull this off. That was amazing.
And all it took was a little bit of like introspective thought and honesty,
Right, we've got a weak point here. We have a weak point there.
And I think it's, people like you said, you tore it all down. People are so uncomfortable with the notion of like, okay, maybe it's broken at every level. Maybe it all needs to get ripped down and rebuilt. But my very first unit in the military is actually part of one of my keynotes, because it was so pivotal in my life. Was we had a particular platform that we operated off. We had Humvees, and they took those away from us. And they gave us this 8-wheeled apparatus called a striker that no one in the world had ever used before. And there wasn't a manual for it. There was no rules. We didn't know. No one knew how to use it. They gave it to us and said, you guys are going to go to Iraq in 18 months. And we're like, okay. And I remember, I'll never forget it. Little baby Private Crutcher standing in rainy Fort Lewis, Washington. For a month, we're being told it's going to be fine because at the end of the month, the battalion commander is going to talk to us. We're like, great. He's going to have all the answers. We're standing out in the rain. Here comes battalion commander. He's like, all right, guys. So I know you guys are all waiting on the answers about how this is going to work and how we're going to implement and who's going to work where, because we've got to restructure everybody now. He's like, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out together.
Awesome.
And I can tell you the result was amazing. We ended up being part of the Expeditionary Force. We were there during the invasion, and we were, to date, the most successful deployed unit in the history of the Army, because we took bottom-up feedback. The doer level, what they had to say mattered. And it created an environment of, like, you and I've talked about it before in other forums, but when you feel like you work with someone rather than for someone, it's a wildly different dynamic.
Right. Because that's where the ego is left at the door. Right. And
100%.
that has an awful lot to do with it. Is that ego is interesting, because I had a conversation about ego. Ego's been this week's word, I think. Right. Ego is incredibly important because its job is to keep you safe.
Right.
Ego is incredibly destructive because its job is to keep you safe.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's learning when to turn it on and turn it off that people really struggle with. I mean, you need it in certain instances, but in a leadership perspective, you can just drop it. Just show up humble, and things are going to work out for you, I promise.
Right. And it depends. So I'll give you an example where I had to throw my ego on. It's my first job as a manager. And I was pretty collaborative with the group. Again, bottom up, right? They do the work. I don't. They know the issues. Tell me about them. I would take your feedback, but then I had to make the decision, right? And there was a decision I had made. And I was having a team meeting, and one of the members in the team said, well, I don't think we voted on that. Right. And I looked at her, and it could have been a him, but I had mostly women. I said, I'm so sorry if I confused you. There must have been something I said that gave you the impression that this was a democracy. It is not.
And there is, of course, from my background, completely agree with, like, sometimes the more lax environment you create, the more successful it will be. But also sometimes, like, you've got to remind, because ultimately you're accountable for the success and failures of the team.
Right. I'm the one and that's how I manage it. I get reamed, you get rewarded.
100%.
I get reamed, you get rewarded.
And people suck at that too.
Yes.
Leaders are quick. I'll quit using that, because managers are quick to throw someone under the bus for a system falling apart. Like, it's Brenda's fault. No, it's not, Todd. It's your fault because you didn't lead them appropriately. Like, it is the leader. The onus is on the leader 100% of the time if it fails.
100% of the time.
If it succeeds, it's through their efforts.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just the way it is.
Absolutely. And they will throw themselves in front of a train for you.
100%. Yes. Yes.
100%. And I had it happen. I'll give you one more story, and then we can get back to some of the methodologies that you use. This was, I was working in the controller's department, a big company, national company. And one of my staff didn't follow procedures, and a huge refund went out that should not have gone.
Whoops.
And the person didn't cash it, but it came back through marketing, which was like a big, oh, no. Right. My CFO came out of his office, and then here's the language, who the fuck did this? Right. And I stood in front of the poor girl and him. And I said, it's my fault, and I'll take care of it. And then he had a few choice words for me and stormed back in his office. So I went into my office and took a look, and my boss came over and he goes, you fucked up. I said, I know, it's my fault. I obviously missed something in training. Right. I'm going to go through my training and see where I screwed up and go through it with her again. And this will never happen again. It's my fault.
What's amazing, and I'm sure this was your experience, is that because in those moments you look at the person who did the thing and you're like, it's all good. We're going to figure it out.
I know, she was dying.
And you alleviated all that stress. That person will never, ever do it again. You didn't have to lose your mind. You didn't have to write anybody up. You didn't have to, no one lost their job.
It's a mistake.
Right. And now she will jump through flaming hoops over shark tanks for you because you showed a little bit of grace.
Right. I mean, and that shows character. It shows integrity. And I think integrity is another word that people don't understand.
I think a lot of times people, they misinterpret their role. I mean, your role as a leader is to facilitate the success of your team. And if that means, Superman jumping in front of the speeding bullet for them, you do that.
Right.
So they can keep doing what they're there to do.
Right. And that's exactly that's a good analogy, because that's how I looked at myself like, I'm standing in front of you. Right. No one can touch you so that you can do your work.
I mean, good leaders insulate their folks, not just from the inside, but as best you can from outside influencers. If there's outside stressors, kiddos sick, cars broken down, do what you can to facilitate that. Insulate them from nonsense so they can perform optimally while they're there.
Right. And that's where success comes.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, that's how I got on the board of directors. That's how I moved up as quickly as I can. Right. That's how I implemented projects, literally, Travis, that went on for years and no one could get the damn thing off the ground. They give them to me and 6 months later it's operational.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It wasn't me.
It's a totally different animal when you've got people working with you towards a common goal.
Right. Yep. Right. So talk to me about some of the challenges that you face with your clients and how you help them.
I've got clients in all different spaces. And one of the big ones, and I know it's not even part of what we talked about, but I'm sure you can commiserate, is the planning aspect.
Plan?
Yeah. It's the planning and the inability to think beyond the 3-month mark. Back planning was such a big part of what I did in the military. We would have to have a whole fiscal year planned out and that's everything, like land, ammo, stuff we're going to be doing all year. And so that's easy for me to do. But folks have a hard time, when they're doing their goals list and they say, I want to achieve X, Y, and Z. Like I've got a bunch of entrepreneurs who they're trying to build their businesses and they want to get to, but they canalize their own dreams. Like I want to X5. I'm like, well, okay. And what else? That's not a goal. That's a car. Like, tell me what you want, like mine's crazy. I go, my thing is like, if I aim for the moon and I hit stratosphere, I still did way better than the dirt right in front of me.
Right.
And so it's having them step outside from it. Just like you were talking about, those people who have those insecurities from when they were a kid, have a hard time dreaming for themselves. Like if you can get an established why going for yourself, that in-state goal, that 10 years from now where you want to be, man, that's like your lighthouse in the storm of life, where it doesn't matter what Tuesday throws at you, how wonky it gets. Yeah. You can stay fixated on that. If you can start working your way back, like we already talked about, if you've got that concrete end state and you work your way back, man, all the moving pieces kind of fall into place.
And the thing, so I love Simon Sinek. And, I was all about why before I even knew the man existed. So when I discovered him, I was like, oh, he's my people.
Right.
Right. But he recently came out with a book called The Infinite Game.
Mhm.
Highly, highly recommend it, because that's about, he gives example after example after example of corporations who are very successful because they have an infinite mindset versus the similar that has a finite mindset
Right.
and their struggles, right? And so if you're looking at what's in front of your nose, the next month, the next quarter, the next 6 months, if that's how you are measuring yourself, you're going to implode,
Oh, for sure. For
right?
sure.
You will not sustain. But if you have, I have this vision now, right? Because of that book, that is not attainable.
Right. And
Right?
that's perfect.
It's awesome because it will last me the rest of my life.
Yes.
That's
yes.
my why.
And like me, we're at a little more personal level. Like, and so, my family and I are like big Disney nerds. Right?
Yeah, I love it.
But there you go. Right. So imagine though, if in 1935, Walt Disney was like, I got this mouse, I'm good.
Yeah.
I mean, and they've got whole departments called Imagineers. These are people whose sole job is to just think up new stuff.
Right.
I mean, and so would you call that like a pretty successful business model? Yeah, because they're always looking beyond the fiscal year, the quarter, the whatever. I mean, look, we both can agree that KPIs are important. Like you've got to keep your eyes on that.
You've got to have a measure of some sort, but it doesn't rule you.
But if you can, get in your DeLorean and then go 10 years in the future and figure out pie in the sky, stupid, unattainable, like you said, here's where I want to be, and aim for that. Because when you look at that quarterly metrics, like you're going to get substandard results. It's going to be you might hit good enough, but you're really going to be like 1.1% off from where you wanted to be from hitting your numbers. Like, don't look at that. Look at my friends and I used to have a saying anytime we'd go anywhere, and it was, we didn't come to participate, we came to take over.
I love that.
And I think folks come to life to participate far too often.
Well, they don't know how to take over. They've been programmed to just participate.
Sure. But like I never took a position in the military and didn't look 2 levels above me and say, well, that's the job I'm really going for. I never took a job in the civilian sector in corporate America and, okay, you're in charge of these departments. Am I, or am I really like way up there? Like, that's the goal. If I'm a part of this, I don't want to be just the cog. Like, I want to be up here.
So let's talk a little bit about setting goals, because this is before I even knew what I was doing. I'm in corporate America. I'm young, right? And my boss says, so what's your goal? Your 5-year goal.
Right.
I said, I want your job. And he's like, really? I'm like, hell yeah. Had it in 2.
Yep. When I was
in 2.
A brand new private to my first unit ever, I screwed something up. So I got in a little bit of trouble, like very early on, first couple of weeks there. And I was sitting down with my first squad leader and he goes, what do you want? And I said the same thing. I said, I want your job and I want all these folks in this section to work for me one day. And he laughed, and showed up 2 years later. Right. That happened. That exact thing happened.
A 5-year goal that you believe in. And that's, you believe that you can do it and you believe that you deserve it. Right. If I want to put one word to why clients come to me, deserve. They don't think they deserve their dream.
Yeah. And that's, man, that's tied into so much baggage from environmentals, from upbringing, from you name it, like a TV show that hit you wrong, like whatever, could be anything. Right. And like, man, what I tell them is that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You're lying to yourself. You're letting whatever like tell you who you are. That's nonsense. That's right. Nonsense.
Right. So from the brain perspective, your brain is like a blank computer being right. program up until around the age of 7 to 9. It's at that age, around 9, that you start making decisions for yourself. But 85 to 90% of your programming happened then.
Sure.
Yep. So you're making emotional decisions like a 7-year-old.
Right.
So when I say that to my clients, they're like, what? I'm like, you are responding based on the information you received at 7.
Yes.
Can we, and how old are you and how many years has that been? Do you think it's time to change?
And then there's where the challenge is, right?
That's the challenge. Yes.
Because neural pathways are hard to carve.
Yeah,
and
that's what I
it's
do.
easy when you're a kid, right? Because it's the first time you're receiving the information and that's the way it is.
Right.
But when you get older and you're trying to outweigh that with new information, what does it take? You've got to practice all that stuff.
You've got to practice. Yes.
Because really, like anything beyond that that time frame you're talking about, like those are all now skills. This isn't just the way it is. These are skills you have to develop and cultivate to be able to inculcate into what the hell you do.
Right. Exactly. So, oh my God, we could go on and on forever, Travis. So some of the things, so you know that I am NLP master trained, and I fell into that, certainly not planning to incorporate NLP into my training. I was just curious as what the hell is this? Right. Same thing with coaching. I never planned to be a coach. And I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm like, oh, this is like cool.
And you discovered you've been doing it organically for like 20 years, right?
Right. But you didn't know. And the reprogramming requires a variety of skills.
Oh, for sure.
Because you have your DNA, your body responds before your brain even knows that you've been triggered. Right. And so it's physiology as well as psychology, as well as emotional, and it's complex and it's rooted. To get to, my dog just had a dream. To get yourself to the point where you identify that you physically are starting to get triggered, then you can choose. Whoa.
Right.
That happened when I was 12. That is not what's happening right now.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. And then not get triggered.
Well, and one of the tricks, one of the tools that I kind of empower my clients with is you got to have like real-time resiliency skills, and one of the things that I use is sentence starters. And so when you get into that moment where it's like, let's say that you have to go give a presentation in front of the board, and the day of, you're like, oh, I'm nervous. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to laugh at me. They're going to think I suck. Like all those negative self-talk things that start happening, like you can qualify yourself right off the bat. Like sentence starters are simple. It's like, no, that's not true. Right. So you start there, but then what you've got to say next has to be quantifiable, has to be true. Otherwise it won't stick.
Right. And you have to believe it.
Sure. Because what if that situation is easy? Like, that's not true because I was chosen for this for a reason. I'm qualified because of X, Y, and Z. And if nothing else, they have to listen to me because Brad's going to be in there and tell them to shut up and turn their phones off.
Right.
Like you're good. So in those moments where you start doing that, like reset back to what you used to know about yourself or what you've told yourself for 20, 30, 40 years, do some of that in the moment and go, okay, like, and that's just a fancy way of telling yourself you're full of shit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But that's okay. Right. It's okay to have that conversation with yourself. And another physiological, there's a couple of physiological things. The quickest way to change your state is through physiology. It's not sustainable. You have to do the other work, but it's the quickest in the moment way to do it. And if you've watched any of Tony Robbins stuff, he's on a trampoline.
Right.
Or he goes, right. Why is he doing that? To get his energy up.
Sure.
Right. To get himself ready for the stage so that when he gets out there, he's bigger than life.
Well, that does so much for you. It turns on the endorphins, which, flood of good brain chemicals happen. So you're open and ready for what's next.
Right. Exactly. So before going on stage, there's this, I'm not going to do it because it's really crazy, but one of the things I was taught, because I am a trained presenter, right, is you get down and you like scrunch yourself and you're like, and squeeze every muscle together, and then you relax and you do it again and you relax, because there's not a trampoline, you don't carry a trampoline with you, but it does the same thing,
right? Yeah.
To kind of release those nerves. So there are so many physiological tricks that you can tap into to shift your state, so then you can deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
For sure.
What's coming up.
Shoot, even breathing, like controlled breathing is a real thing.
Oh yeah. And
there's so many different methods for it. You get the 5-second cadence or positive emotion, all the different ones you you can plug and play with. But people, on average, if you did a poll of folks, like they don't actually intentionally breathe ever. And it makes a massive difference whether, if you're doing like deep breathing rather than just diaphragm to keep me alive breathing, it's a big difference. And one of them, generates ATP synthesis and turns on good brain chemicals. The other one just keeps you moving through the day. So intentionally breathing is a big thing too.
Well, turning on the brain chemicals through your breath, if you can breathe and imagine, I mean, when I breathe deep, I feel it in my lower back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. And then feel it go up your spine. Because that's what's happening. So feel it, right? Because your blood is bringing that stuff up there, right? And you can feel your brain getting stimulated.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's almost like you're a machine.
You're a machine. You
It's
really
crazy.
are a machine. So where else? There's so much that I want to cover with you, Travis, and we're just going to take forever. So you have people kind of sit down and intellectually figure out, this is not going to happen. I'm good at this. I'm not good at that. That's fine. Right. I was chosen for a reason. I can do this. Then what?
Well, that's the tough part, right? So many people, then what is a multifaceted answer? Something that I kind of lean on a lot is, you're not in this alone. I think a lot of people become like this island in and of themselves, and they think, particularly in corporate America, like all these go-getters are like, I'm all by myself and I'm just going to go this straight line and I'm going to go to the top. But the reality is like, you're not going to get there by yourself.
And it's not going to be straight.
Right. And so one of the things I like to reflect on a lot of times, like when we're doing urban assault stuff in the military, it's eventually you're going to kick open a door and go through it. And everyone in that stack of 4 people has their job. And that first entry point, we call that the fatal funnel, right? And the last thing you want is for number 1 to get stuck there, to get scared and not want to go through it, because they're going down and maybe 2 and 3 are going down as well.
Right.
So it's important to have people on your team, because what happens if 1 freezes, 2 is pushing 1 out of the way. Like, we're going through the door, dum-dum.
Right.
So you need to have people around you so that when you've done all the stuff you can do, and so what I like to do is tie people to my why, that 10-year why. It, for me, you know my life. And so, it's like, I've got 4 kiddos that are my entire world. I've got an awesome wife who does my podcast with me. So if I get stuck in that fatal funnel for a minute, I'm like, okay, I've got people that are pushing me through this. I can do this because it's not just me. I'm not doing this alone.
Right. It's interesting. I had a podcast that came out today. One of the stories I talk about is my short-term why. So your why can be to put a roof over my head, to put food on the table. It doesn't have to be, this big, enormous thing. And there was a time in my life where I was on welfare with a 1.5-year-old daughter, and I was not raising her that way. It was a stopgap for 3 months to get me from A to B. And I got a job, which paid me less than I was making on welfare.
Right.
Plus I lost food stamps and I had to pay childcare. Right. I don't know how I made ends meet, but within 6 months, I had a different job, which paid way better.
Right.
And within 2 years, I had that manager's job, which I had a house and I was buying a car with cash.
And you're a smart lady. So prior to making that decision, you did the numbers on everything. You knew you were going into something scary.
Right.
But that
I might be stuck.
Pushed you through, right?
Right. This child is not going to be raised this way. We're going to have a better life. We're going to do whatever. And we did. And
your why, that's what's so great. Like when you say that, because I know where you are now. Mm-hmm. Your whys continue to grow.
Right.
Just like that dream is so far away from you, that 10-year unattainable thing. It's like, okay, so we got that. Check that off the list. What's next? I want X, Y, and Z for my family. Okay, check that off. Your why can grow and change. It doesn't have to say. That's what happens. Like people get complacent. They check that one off the list. Like, I'm good. Are you though? Are you?
Well, and then they get comfortable. And I'll tell you, Travis, some of my clients, many of my clients, are the ones who maybe had a dream
Right.
And, they're successful. They're making really good money.
Sure.
They have a beautiful home. They have a nice family, and they're empty.
Right. I mean, we were both there, right? We both
Oh,
had the money. We both had the
oh my
job, and we were
God. And
both
I
like,
hated
this
it.
sucks.
Yeah. 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 And here I am trying to make it on my own. Well, not trying. I do just fine.
Right. But even in those moments, like, when I walked away, because I had military retirement and now this great job. And so I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life.
Right.
We can afford to do anything we want. But by the time I get off work and have the time to do it, I don't want to do anything. I'm depleted because I have a soul crushing existence of just going and function all day.
And that's the key, soul crunching. As an entrepreneur, believe me, we don't put in less hours.
Oh, no.
We put in way more hours.
When you're your own boss, you can screw up and work all day.
I spent 4 hours today recouping one transcription because I lost a bunch of stuff. 4 hours. And I lost more than one transcription.
Oh, you're better than me. I'd have let it go.
Oh, no.
It'd have been gone.
Nope. I want it. But that's the way it goes. Because shit happens.
Right.
And then
Sure.
you make a decision. And, I'm like, okay, so the next, I have a whole bunch of them that I paid for and I could just download them. But
Right.
This was one that I happened to have done on my own. And like, don't ever do that again, Gail. It's worth paying for it.
But it's just like it harkens back to what we talked about before. Like, it was a problem and you could have looked at it as a failure, but instead you learned a lot.
Right.
And now if it does ever happen again, that you lose track, is like, the process to get it back. Like,
right.
It's a perspective thing. You could go, God, that sucked. I lost 4 hours. You go, man, I'm golden next time that happens.
Right. Because I'm never going down that road again.
Right.
And, so is it worth it to save $60? No.
Ultimately, no.
No, because it's not that expensive to have a transcription done.
Right.
Right. So, and so, yes, this will be transcribed. And so with that, is there something else that you would like to add before we wrap up, Travis, about the types of things that you do with your clients?
I think one of the things that, and it's been kind of my topic for the last week or so, like the universe starts telling you talk about this. And so it may not actually even be in line with anything we've talked about, but it's one of those compulsions at this point. Man, I hate to use this verbiage, but I'm going to. Don't be a douchebag. Okay. And apply that information to yourself as well. Like, be a better human, because we're so good at, not so good, but folks are generally pretty good about pumping decent into the universe, right? So like, pump good into the universe, not just decent, and then apply that same grace to yourself. I think so often what we do is we give everyone else but ourselves our very best. And that's really a detriment to you. Like for me, I get up early before everybody in my house. I get up at 4 o'clock. So I have time to like drink some coffee, lift weights, shower, human up before the first kiddo's out of bed, right? If I don't do that for me first, if I don't give myself grace and time first, I'm not the best version of me.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I'm up at 3:30, so I'm a little bit ahead of you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
But like, don't short yourself. Show up your best because you're taking care of you. Don't be a douchebag to yourself, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's, I think of the whipping yourself, right? And people do that. I worked with one gentleman, and I was a consultant, and I was brought in to help him. He was a new department to create his team. How does this now fit in with the workflow?
Right.
Who are we? What's the workflow? And help him with his leadership skills. And one of the things that I had a real hard time working with him on was him taking the blame.
Right.
There's the difference between taking responsibility like I did with that CFO and taking the blame.
Yeah, you don't internalize accountability.
No. And it got to the point where even his staff, because I would have one-to-ones with his staff, to find out how they were doing. And like, I adore the man, but I really am sick of him taking the blame.
And what's crazy too is, and I know you see this with your clients, just like I see with mine, is when they get stuck in that I suck, and they'll come to you with a laundry list of, I suck at this, I suck at this, I suck at this. Like, okay, maybe. What are you doing about it?
Right. But
So
why
just like in
start-
that situation you talked about with the big refund,
right.
it's like you could have been like, I suck at my job. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe in that moment you did,
Yeah.
but you fixed it, right? And did you
Right.
ever suck at that again? No. So don't live in it. Don't live in the I suck. Acknowledge it and move through it.
Oh my God, we all suck at something. You
Sure.
know, we all do. It's just crazy. But yeah, this has been awesome, Travis.
I
we need to
thank you
do
so
this
much for
again.
having me. Yes, I really enjoyed it for sure.
Yeah, we definitely need to do this again. And how can people get in touch with you if they want more information?
Website's aboveaverageleadership.com. Podcast is Above Average Podcast, comes out every Wednesday. It's up before you, I promise. So check it out. And yeah, those are the big ones. I mean, you can watch the stream on YouTube if you want to, if you can tolerate any more of this visual. We're there every Monday, so check it out.
His podcasts are awesome, guys. You know, I pop in every once in a while to listen to what it is that you have to say. So absolutely.
Gail wrote me a wonderful review, actually. That's a true
did I?
story.
It was a while ago then. So it's time for another one. Yeah.
There you go.
So thank you so much. And this is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. And if this resonated with you, please let us know. And if there's something in here that maybe someone you know could listen to, and maybe this could help, share this with them and leave comments. I might do an Ask Me Anything based on your comments below. Thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Travis, and have a fabulous day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailkraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.